Welcome to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Hannah O'Brien, both a veteran spouse and the program manager for the Veteran Spouse Network. On each episode of our show, I will host different guests to learn more about the stories, unmet needs, and resources available to our military and veteran families. We're the show that's making space for your stories, so that here you know you're never alone. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this month's episode of the Veteran Spouse Network podcast. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and since we tackled the topic of suicide loss on last month's episode, and if you haven't given that a listen yet, you definitely should, we thought it would be a good idea to discuss safety planning on this month's episode. We talk a lot about safety planning as a critical tool for prevention, both for individuals, couples, and families. But we also hear that a lot of people either don't know really what that means or don't see value in it, and therefore they don't do it. It is honestly such an easy thing to do and so important. So I thought I'd bring my husband, Cody, back on, and we'd actually do a safety plan together to hopefully help everyone understand how simple it can be and really how valuable it is. So we're also going to discuss how to involve your family in safety planning, and we're going to particularly focus on lethal means safety. As first-time parents ourselves with a 16-month-old in the house, we've really begun to see how important it is that we have a safety plan in place, both for when one of us may be experiencing a crisis, as well as just for the safe storage of firearms and medication in our home. So throughout, we'll talk about what this all means to our family, as well as how things may look different for your family. We hope that you find this conversation and exercise helpful and that it inspires you to create a safety plan or revisit an existing one with your own family. So if you're longtime listeners, you've probably already heard my husband introduce himself. This is his third time joining the podcast. But Cody, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just share a little bit about your background for those who don't already know you.
Yeah, of course. Again, just want to say thank you for having me back. I enjoy sharing my experiences, especially if it can help anybody else. My name's Cody. I served in the Marine Corps from 2003 to 2010, 2 combat deployments. I was injured on my second deployment. Got out on a medical separation with an honorable discharge, and here I am several years later. It's been a challenging and a long path to get to where I am now, but I am definitely a better person from when I started, first transitioned out. So yeah, again, thanks for having me, and yeah, let's dive in.
And I always think as a couple, it's always good to have people here. So we met after his time in the military. This all was a learning curve to me when we met. So just a little about our journey as a couple. Okay, so safety planning. What the heck do you even know about that? What does that mean to you when you hear me say that?
So initially, I guess if you would say, the term safety planning to me, I would think of something that you plan for an emergency, like a fire in the house, or another type of apocalyptic crisis or something, like, oh, hey, you need to evacuate and go somewhere else, like zombie apocalypse. I don't know.
A physical emergency.
An actual physical emergency. Yes, definitely. I would not have thought anything about a mental health crisis when thinking about the term safety planning.
And then this is a tool probably most commonly used, like counselors will ask you to do this. And I know throughout your journey, you've seen a lot of different counselors and you've been in a lot of different places in your mental health journey. So I'm curious, has any counselor ever asked you to do a safety plan?
So yeah, I know you're right. I have seen numerous counselors over the years, just, kind of on that journey to find, the one that works and fits best with, what you're going through and your needs and your preferences. But I have to say, I'm trying to think about it right now, and I can't think of a single time that anyone has ever mentioned a safety plan to me.
Interesting. And so if, you're someone who's gone through your own counseling, that may be the context in which you're familiar with a safety plan. And so I did want to take some time here at the beginning just to talk about like what we even mean by that and what we're going to be doing. Um, because yes, in its most traditional sense, a safety plan is a written list of coping strategies and resources of support for individuals who that they can use that have been deemed to be at high risk for suicide, and it is a tool that a counselor would most likely use with you, that you could then tap into on your own, either before or during a suicidal crisis. And so if you like were to Google stuff, that's what you would find. It would really have this emphasis on a suicidal crisis. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits beyond that as well. But the plan is supposed to be really brief, in that person's own words, and really easy to read and follow, so that if you were in crisis, you could utilize it. So it's a tool. It's a prevention tool. It's a crisis tool. And it really, while its focus is on helping someone as they're kind of pre or in a suicidal crisis, that seems intense, and it is. And so you may be saying, yeah, okay, well, then why would I need to do that? That's not me. Or you might, as the spouse, be saying, how am I possibly going to bring this up with my veteran? And then they're going to think I'm worried that they're thinking about suicide. And you're not alone. But the truth is that a safety plan really can be used as a preventative tool. And while we all hope to never be in a suicidal crisis, we don't really have the pleasure of knowing whether that's going to be our journey or not. And so why wouldn't you rather be prepared? And that is exactly what a safety plan is for. And so why is it important? For the reason I just said, you want to be prepared. Even if you never use it, that's great, but you'd hate to need it and then not have it. And plus, all aspects of the safety plan can really still be useful, just if you're feeling stressed or anxious or depressed, regardless of whether or not it may ever get to the point of having thoughts or feelings of suicide. You can still tap into these tools, so it can be a tool well beyond that one use case. So when should you create one? You can create one at any time, but we and everyone certainly recommends that you create it before you need it. If you are in crisis, it's not too late in the sense that it's not too late to do anything, but this is the tool you want to have before you're in crisis. And so you really want to take the time to sit down and do this when you're in a good spot or in a goodish spot. And so it is done like for an individual. And so, we may be in this example a little bit more focused on Cody, but as we sit here today, I'm really not worried about my husband's mental health. Like, I don't have concerns that he's, moving towards a suicidal crisis or anything like that. But I honestly, like, for most of our relationship felt that way, that like, that's not anything I had to worry about. Like, he's good. We have challenges, that's for sure, but I was never really worried about him being in crisis until an unanticipated trigger happened. And if you don't know by now, 99.9% of triggers are unanticipated. And then we were in trouble, and neither really one of us knew what to do. He was in crisis. I was the partner or spouse, I guess I was, we were married at the time, who didn't really know how to support you because we didn't have the tools. We hadn't had those conversations. And so neither one of us want to be in a position like that again, especially now that we have a daughter in the picture. So if you're the one kind of bringing this to your veteran and you're unsure how they'll react, make sure to bring it up in the calm time, not in the crisis time, not in a heated time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But ideally, you're creating it before anyone's in crisis. And then kind of finally, why is it important to involve your partner and your family, and how do you involve them? Because at the end of the day, you'll see it really is an individual's tool. Like, what do I do if I'm in crisis? But the value, or when you're creating it with your partner or as a family, depending on the age, depending as who you define as your family and the ages of those individuals, it can really open the door to important conversations that can help you feel closer to one another and better understand how to support one another when the other is getting to that crisis point. No one is an island, and especially when you're in a committed relationship or have children, it's really important to make them a part of that safety planning process so we all know how to support each other. So there's a lot of value. It is absolutely a tool you can utilize on your own. You don't have to be in a relationship or a family to benefit from a safety plan. Please use it no matter what. But if you're in a relationship or you have family who are really, in a place to be able to support you, it can be really beneficial to involve them in this process or share it with them, once you've done it so that they have some insight into that as well. All right, so that was a lot for me, but I wanted to make sure we really understood kind of what this is, why, who it's for, when to use it, why it's important. So now, Cody, that you got to hear my kind of whole spiel about all of that, um, what are your thoughts now about the active safety planning importance, all that good stuff?
Uh, well, I guess initially, first and foremost, I think it's a great idea. Um, I think great is an understatement here, but just like with any preparation, it's always better to have a plan in place before something actually happens. Um, I guess that's a quick example, your SOL if there's a fire and you don't have a fire extinguisher, you know. Um, so if you're preparing for other types of emergencies or, in this case, crisis, why wouldn't you prepare for a mental health crisis?
Right.
Just like you're prepared for anything else.
Seems basic.
Seems simple, right? Uh, so we've all seen other veterans go through this, or at least heard stories of veterans going through a mental health crisis, even if we haven't gone through one ourselves. Um, so, I mean, I think it's absolutely something that is needed. Um, hopefully, you never have to use it, just like with a fire extinguisher.
Right.
But um, it's better to have it.
You want to have it. Can't use it if you don't have it. Um, so anybody who's kind of listened to our story over time, we're obviously in a much better place today than we were earlier in our relationship, and I imagine that some of our listeners may be in a more similar place to us than we when we were earlier in our relationship. So when things are a little bit more turbulent, both on your mental health front, but also like in our relationship and how we were connecting and trusting one another and all those things. So I'm gonna ask you to kind of rewind as much as you can mentally and kind of think, what if, maybe in those first couple years of our relationship, what feelings do you think you might have had if I had kind of brought this up saying, hey, I want us to sit down and do a safety plan together?
Like, what's that? All right, let me rewind here. Turbulent, that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to sit here and say that I would have been open to it. Um, I probably would have thought that it wasn't necessary. But if you were to ask me to do it, since I cared about you, I would have done it, to appease you.
The best reason to do anything that's supposed to be for you.
All
To appease
right.
another
No,
person.
that's what I'm supposed to do, right?
Well, you said for you, I guess I'll do it.
Um, Definitely, early in our relationship, I, probably would have thought that I don't need that. Why do I need that?
Yeah, I think, for my side of like, if I had, and this wasn't something I really knew about as a tool at the time. So, just same thing, trying to kind of rewind in my mind and think how I might have felt bringing this up to you. I think, I think I would have worried kind of what you just said, like that you might react to me. I honestly probably don't think you would have done it to appease me. I would have been more concerned that like you would have got really defensive, been like, why do you think I need that? Like,
Mhm. I
why are
think,
you worried about me?
yeah,
And why are we going to do this together? Or that I was like overreaching, like
yeah, yeah.
in the relationship.
I think I absolutely would have tried to not get defensive about it, but I mean, just thinking back on, the person I was 9 years ago
Mhm.
now, um, yeah, I probably would have gotten defensive about it in one way or another for sure. And be like, yo, I gotta go.
Yeah, or just been like, nah, I'm out.
I got something to do.
But isn't this?
That isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, this is a tool we're doing, almost a decade into our relationship at a very different place. So we understand you might not be in this place. And so throughout, we're going to kind of try and talk about that as well. And or different family types and things like that. So you can think about how this might look in your family. All right. So with that said, we're actually going to kind of jump into a live safety plan with you guys. We're using a tool called the Stanley Brown Safety Planning Intervention Tool, which we definitely recommend, but there are many out there. So I'm just gonna the nice thing about this is you can like Google that and they have a little website and it has like a tool you can download so that you can actually like print it out and write this out. Because that's the point, or fill it out on Adobe, whatever. That's the point, is that you have something tangible to reference, so that you're not kind of having to go back into your brain when your brain is not functioning because you're in a mental health crisis, trying to figure out how to help yourself. You have a easy, quick to digest tool to reference in those moments. And so they just kind of take us step by step. So that's what we're going to do, and just kind of talk about what that might look like for us. So again, this is something, as a tool, it is for the individual. So this would be like Cody's safety plan, Hannah's safety plan, is how you're answering these things. So the first step is warning signs. So recognizing warning signs of an impeding crisis. And, we all know that that's one of the most effective ways to kind of get in front of a crisis, is know when it's starting to happen, identifying those warning signs in yourself or in your partner, and being able to intervene. So, Cody, what are some of the warning signs you've been able to kind of notice? Hey, oops, when I start doing this or thinking this or whatever, that might mean I'm headed down not a great path.
So yeah, I mean, just for me personally, and yeah, I don't mind sharing this at all. Warning signs for myself that I've come to be able to identify, which took some time and some work,
Yeah,
to be able to,
all of us.
identify, clearly what some of these warning signs are. I tend to, when my thoughts start to not just wander, but they start to race,
Mhm.
essentially. Um, for me personally, it's usually when I have too much downtime, or just when I'm not occupying my mind space with productive things. Um, and then yeah, then the thoughts start racing, the mind starts wandering, it just like snowballs on itself. And now it starts off with feelings of anxiety,
Mhm.
anxiousness. And this all happens like relatively quickly too. Then
Yeah.
that'll just kind of end up, this domino effect into um, now I'm worked up. Now I'm having physiological responses. My heart's racing, I'm breathing faster, and now I'm, uh, for lack of better words, freaking out. You know, um, and like in the past, it's like, hey, I need to remove myself from like everybody. Like I need to go somewhere where I'm just, yeah,
Isolation.
I need to isolate
Yeah.
myself.
So that would be a warning
So
sign.
yeah, those feelings of, so initially anxiety and then that need or desire to isolate.
Yeah. And then see another, like, just as I'm thinking, or as he's talking, I'm thinking about what are the things when I see, I'm like, oh, maybe Cody's not doing well. And that's another reason why this can be so valuable to do as a couple. Because he may have his warning signs for when he's in crisis that he's feeling and experiencing and aware of. And you said this took some time to have that and
Mm-hmm.
some work
Mm-hmm.
to be aware of. So there might be clear warning signs to you as a partner that the individual is not aware of.
For sure.
And that's valuable to you as the partner, but it's also valuable to have that conversation together. Um, Ours are pretty much the same, but like I would notice that in the past, like you'd be getting worked up and you wouldn't even think you're worked up, like, or at least, didn't appear to be that way. And that kind of happened where I think we talked about, and I would start asking you, like, are you okay? And that would kind of eventually became something that kind of like registered for you, like, oh shit, she was asking me if I was okay. That means I don't seem okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like sort of thing. When it was like very evident to me that you're not okay, even if it was in a little thing, like you just seemed irritable or like really low E or distracted, um, or something like that. And so that can be why it can be really helpful to talk this out as a couple because your partner may see things that you don't. And even if you do, it's still, and vice versa, right? Like, what if I didn't know that that's what he's experiencing? That's beneficial to me as the partner to know what to look out for. In case as the individual, you're not in a place to notice those warning signs in the moment. I know for me, it's this is hard for you because you probably don't notice it, but probably for me is when I stop talking to you about stuff, like whatever I'm dealing with, like if I'm not talking to you about it, and I'm just keeping it to myself. So that's something I notice is like I'll just internalize something because that's become such a important and normal part of our relationship is to talk about stuff. Took a long time to get there and a lot of work to get there, but so that's a sign for myself when I'm not doing well is if I'm having difficult thoughts and feelings about something and I haven't shared them with you. Then I'm like, why haven't I shared them with you? Like sort of thing. And it doesn't mean that they're about you, right? It could be about total other stuff, but that, you're obviously the person I trust and talk to the most. So if I'm not talking through that with that person, then that's my warning sign that I'm not doing the right thing. All right. So step one, yay. Step two is talking about internal coping strategies. So here's where we kind of ask ourselves, like, what can we do just as an individual without, like, so literally without the assistance of any other person, if we have noticed those warning signs and we're going down that path. What are ways, I think the way they kind of talk about it is to distract ourselves from the crisis. So essentially to allow time for those negative thoughts to subside. Um, so I docked, so I'll turn it over to you. Things that you do as an individual, coping strategies.
The things I employ now, again, it takes work to get to that point. And this is also just to say that, I still work at it every single day.
Oh gosh, everyone, yeah.
Everybody.
As you should, as we all should.
Absolutely. And these things change too as you develop and learn more about yourself. I feel like that's something you're never done learning about yourself. Um, so some of the internal coping strategies I have come to utilize. Um, Obviously, like you said, it's like I always had a feeling like, okay, I need to let these thoughts kind of like pass, essentially, but how can I facilitate that?
Mhm.
And sometimes like, oh hey, yeah, no, I don't need to be letting my mind go there in the first place. So I like to do things that I mean, obviously everybody says, hey, yeah, you just do something you enjoy to do. It's like, and sometimes those things that you normally enjoy to do, it's like, hey, no, I don't want to do that right now. I'm not in the mind space for
Right.
that or the
Yeah.
the right headspace for it. But I find for me right now, playing disc golf, like solo, just going and playing disc golf by myself, that's very therapeutic for my for me. um uh every once in a while, and I'm not saying video games is the answer because I don't believe in that because you can dive too far down that rabbit hole for sure. But I'll try to throw on like some Mario Kart or something. It's
Something fun, lighthearted, yeah.
something fun, something light, something I enjoy, and something that's not this huge like commitment to partake in. Trying to think, other things. I know this is kind of a weird one, but I enjoy mowing the yard.
Go for it.
Uh, I find that's usually very helpful too. I put on some music. Music, that's
Mm,
that's another a huge one for me. Listen to some music, whether it's doing just some tidying around the house, some chores around the house, or mowing the yard. Throw on my AirPods and listen to some music. That's usually very helpful for me.
no. A lot of the same ones, but definitely music for me as well. TV, like, or a movie or something,
Mm-hmm.
just something other, someone else's story to focus on. Um, a walk. I will be in my head in a walk, so I just have to decide, is that where I want to be, So depending on the what I think I need, maybe a walk. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate what you said of like one that takes some time to figure out and it's gonna change. So like if something's not working, like, and then why it's good to have more than one thing, What if my thing's a walk and it's raining? Um, and that's all I have, and I'm like, well, never mind. I guess I'll just sit here in these thoughts. So you want to have a long list. And another thing that, like, another reason to do this with a partner is they can help brainstorm those things. Or same, like, I mean, I don't know, like, I think that was stuff we talked about together, like helping you figure that out, like what those things were for you, and that maybe you should do some more, like go find some more so that it's not just the one or whatever. So that's another benefit to talking it through together.
Mm-hmm.
So step three is utilizing social contacts as a means of distraction. So this is still with the goal of trying to kind of create distance from your thoughts and help distract you. So what people and situations can I engage in? So this is now I'm not just by myself, just alone, but where and who can I engage to help distract me
Mm-hmm.
in a positive way?
Paul. Right. Yeah. Not the like your drinking buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, remember time. Let's go have a beer. Well,
Mhm.
I won't be the only one to ever say this, but alcohol is not the answer.
Mhm. Uh-oh.
That is not a productive answer. Um, Now that's not to say like, yeah, after a long hard day or something like that, hey, yeah, ice cold beer, you know, isn't
Especially if you know that's not
helpful.
going to take you to a good place,
Right. Maybe it's like, hey,
right?
let's go out, let's go, 6th Street and bar hop kind of thing. But uh to get back on subject here, your what we're talking about, friends, right? Or your
Friends and
social contacts,
situations
yeah.
that can, help
Yeah.
cause a distraction.
So
Where can you go? Who can you enlist?
obviously, with some um military background, I still keep in contact with a couple of my, Marine buddies. And, we text often, sometimes we'll go weeks without texting. But that doesn't change our relationship, and anytime, like Dirk,
Mhm.
anytime he hits me up, I'm right there, Joe, on the spot responding. And then likewise, anytime I text him, he's right there, texting me right back. And sometimes it's a phone call. We text more than phone calls because texting these days seems to be a little easier
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons. And I have some work buddies too. Like we work very closely together at work. Um, and so that's helpful too. We oftentimes just shoot the shit.
Mhm. What about situations? Like what things that you could do with somebody to take your
Oh,
mind
yeah,
off
yeah,
of
yeah. So I have a really good friend of mine, which is also uh, spouse of one of your really good
Yes.
friends. Um, we actually play disc golf together. We play regular golf together. And so yes, that's something I feel like we both love to do on the same level. Yeah, we'll go do that. So I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. I'm playing disc golf, which I love to do, and I'm with somebody.
Hmm.
So, helpful.
Someone to hit up, something to do with somebody
Hmm.
to distract. I'm lucky. I have a lot of people I feel like I could put on that list. I have a lot of girlfriends I could hang out with, or our family lives in town. For me, they'd be great to hang out with and pleasantly distract myself with. I'm trying to think of like social settings. I'll be the honest, like I'm not super concerned about myself with like use of alcohol. So like if I'm not really worried that I'm in a bad place, like yeah, to me it might be great to go and grab a beer with a friend and just kind of have some decompression. But if I knew I was in a bad place, I would definitely want to stay away from alcohol. Um, some of my friends and I will go to the pool or something. I love being in water. That's very calming. So depending on, availability, time of the year, um, getting some friends together and going to the pool would be a nice distraction. Um, so those are things to do to distract you from how you're feeling. So step 4 is making a list of contacts, friends, family, so personal contacts, not professional contacts, personal contacts who you could reach out to and talk to about what you're going through. So the last two were things I could do and people I could talk to distract myself from what I'm going through. This is no, I need to talk to someone about how I'm feeling, and need that list of safe people to do that with.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I don't know, Reese.
She's not gonna have much to say in return. That's our daughter. That's our 16-month-old daughter.
16 So, you can bounce some ideas off of her, just kind of like so generally, how you're feeling. She won't
I
understand.
don't think that's what they're looking for, but I appreciate it. Yeah.
Like I said, I definitely have, a couple of my Marine buddies that I still talk to. Um, some guys at work. We are actually lucky enough to have a peer support team at work that doesn't always have to be work related
Mm-hmm.
to reach out to them.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that's very helpful. Um,
I think a lot of times too, it's like depending on what you're going through, like depending on what the issue is,
yeah.
you might have a different list. And so this is just thinking through kind of who you're, I mean, it'd be great to have a long freaking list of people, right? And you could just kind of make that decision in the moment who seems the most appropriate. But also acknowledge that you may not have a long list, and that's okay. Try and the goal would to be at least to have one person on it. I think the thing itself has like 3 listed, so that's probably the goal that they're trying to get us to be able to list at least 3, if we're able. So definitely like my mom, would probably be on that list for most things, but I might not talk to her about everything, right? I might talk to some of my good girlfriends, or a lot of my coworkers are also veteran spouses. So if it were something, unique to our community that was, I was feeling a certain way about, I might be more comfortable talking to one of them. So just kind of thinking about those different situations and who you feel comfortable with, and making sure those people are on your list. Or maybe if you don't have a long list, maybe how could you change that?
Yeah, yeah.
And then step 5 is professionals and agencies you can contact during a crisis. So when you feel you're at that space where you're like, nope, this stuff isn't working and I need to talk to the professionals, um, what are some of those resources you can tap into and listing them out?
So again, I guess I'm kind of doubling up here. So, with work for me, for those of y'all that don't know, I currently work in EMS. So we are lucky enough to have a peer support team at work that we can reach out to 24/7. And when I say peer support, I mean it's true peer support. It's people that do the exact same job we do.
Hmm.
People we work
So it's
with
kind of paraprofessional.
day-to-day basis. Yeah. And yeah, you can reach out to them anytime. Doesn't matter what time of day. You can always text them, call them. Obviously, there's I have utilized the VA hotlines before. Um, and there's been a handful of occasions that I've found them helpful. Um, those those are the two that really stand out to me right now.
What about your counselor?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's technically VA, but he's with the vet center.
Right, but I mean, what I thought what you were describing before was like a crisis line.
Oh, yeah, I've reached out to him before, definitely in a crisis situation.
Right. So difference between like a human person that you have professional relationship with versus like a crisis line, which is going to
Oh, I
be
see what you
somebody
mean.
you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. Two different
Um,
two different resources.
yeah, two very
Yeah.
different resources. Yeah, 'cause crisis line is going to be very, I don't want to say disconnected, but reaching out to somebody that actually knows you a little bit more. Like, if you have a counselor, yeah, I've definitely reached out to them before.
Yeah. And for those of you guys who don't, I mean, he mentions BA crisis line, but the now I think it's all just 988. So
Hmm.
you just do 988, and then if you press one, it'll connect you to their veteran specific team. And it says veteran, but it means anyone who is affiliated to that community who loves a veteran, who's worried about a veteran or who's worried about someone in a veteran's life. So don't feel like if you're a spouse, you can't use that line. You absolutely can. They want you to. So you can use just regularly 988 or hit one, and then you're talking to people who have that kind of cultural competence and awareness of the military and veteran community.
Who knows?
Uno, press one. 988, press one. Same, I have a therapist, so I'd certainly put him on that list. And then yeah, those hotlines can be really beneficial. So don't, you know, and they really they can help get you connected to professional resources. So if you feel like you don't have that many professional resources, that's one of the things they're there to do. So that they can be a great resource. All right. So actually we didn't go through that fast. We took our time. That is the bulk of it. And then the final step is where we're going to spend a little more time, which is talking about how to make the home environment or environment in general safer by reducing access to lethal means. And so we're going to spend more time on that. You know, it's a key component of safety planning, eliminating or limiting access to any potentially lethal means in the environment, specifically so that you can allow time to pass, creating time and distance between yourself and um, whatever that lethal means is. So, what does that even mean, right? Those are any tools that are most likely to cause death when used by someone who is feeling suicidal. So that could be medication, firearms, alcohol, or depending on the individual, it could be like a motorcycle or car. Just it really depends on um, everyone's own situation, but some of them are very obvious, like firearms and medication.
Mhm.
So more people spend time talking about that, but it really refers to anything that could cause death. So we wanted to spend more time talking through that portion of the safety plan because it really can be a sensitive topic, both within the community and within a family. But it's obviously very critical. Creating a safe environment is incredibly important, whether you're in a mental health crisis or just even in everyday life. If you have kiddos in the home, again, that's really what prompted us to start having this conversation. We have a 16-month-old. She's incredibly active. Um, Pretty much everyone has medication in the home. Some families like ours also have firearms in the home. And so, we've taken some measures, but we really thought we've been having these conversations a lot, but we thought we would formally talk through it for the benefit of everyone listening, on kind of how we're working to make our home environment safer,
Mhm.
both again for everyday life with our child, as well as how those plans might need to change, if anyone were to be in crisis. So, um, I do really want to emphasize that lethal means refers to a multitude of things. We're going to focus mostly on firearms and medication in our conversation, but that might be different for your family. Like if your partner really struggles with alcohol and it's created unsafe situations, that needs to be part of the conversation. If um, that you get on the motorcycle when you're in a bad place and are very reckless, yeah, that is a lethal means at that point, and
Mhm.
that needs to be a part of the conversation. So I think that's really the most important thing to remember from this is that it's individualized, and I think so it can so easily get, oh, we're talking about guns, everyone's talking about guns when they're talking about this. And one of the reasons we are talking about guns a lot is because they are like the most efficient killer. People who use a firearm to attempt suicide are very successful. So that's part of the reason it gets talked about as much as it does, but it is just part of it. So Cody,
Yes.
you own firearms, and so tell me just a bit about like why do you own a firearm? Why is it important to you? What does it mean to you to own a firearm?
Okay. So I guess without going down too much of a rabbit hole, but this is something that I could elaborate on too, pretty well. I guess I'll start off with what it means to me. So I learned just a little bit of a backstory here. I learned how to shoot when I was 9. I actually had one of my best friends at that age. His dad was actually the one that would take myself and my friend, his son. We were in the same grade. Took us would take us out hunting with him. And he's the one that taught me how to shoot at 9 years old. So, um, at a very early age, I was taught, educated, about like,
Mhm.
gun safety, weapon safety. Um, so I feel like I'm lucky enough to have that as, a background, essentially. My dad was, he served in the Air Force during the Vietnam era. He was an MP. And then afterwards, he was a cop. So there's that, familiarity of, having somebody that, was educated and, safety conscious, about having firearms.
Used them for their job.
Yeah, yeah,
Requirement
exactly.
of the job.
And so of course he owned firearms. So again, even at home, I grew up with firearms in the house. He always kept them, safe and secure. So I guess, that was always kind of instilled, um, continued to be instilled in me at a very early age. Um, so the firearms we own today, actually, I inherited from my dad. Those are, I mean, I know you know. Uh, so yeah, what we have today, you used to be my dad's. So there's a sentimental value and attachment there, when it comes to the ones that we do own. Um, my there's an intimacy, as a Marine, there's an intimacy that is kind of taught and really instilled into you very early on, in your Marine Corps career. It starts in boot camp, essentially. They instill certain values when it comes to firearms in you. And I actually wanted to read something really quickly. It's very short. It's not very long, but it's actually called the Rifleman's Creed, and it's something that you are taught and you actually memorize and you recite this every single night before you go to bed in boot camp.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it really can speak to the intimate relationship that, or I should say, the bond that you have with your rifle, as a Marine. So, and some of y'all may be a little bit familiar if you've ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket. It's
Mhm.
something that they recite a portion of it, in the movie. But it's doesn't make it any less true because it's very accurate. So it starts off like this. It says, "This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My rifle is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. My rifle without me is useless. Without my rifle, I am useless. I must fire my rifle true. I must shoot straighter than my enemy who is trying to kill me. I must shoot him before he shoots me. My rifle and myself know that what counts in this war is not the rounds we fire, the noise of our burst, nor the smoke we make. We know that it is the hits that count. My rifle is human, even as I, because it is my life. Thus, I will learn it as a brother. I will learn its weaknesses, its strengths, its parts, its accessories, its sights, and its barrel. I will ever guard it against the ravages of weather and damage, as I will ever guard my legs, my arms, my eyes, and my heart against damage. I will keep my rifle clean and ready. We will become a part of each other." There's a couple more sentences after that, but I really feel like that last portion really kind of hits it,
Hmm.
really, dead center on, that bond that you have with your rifle. And
Not that you just have, but that you are taught to have.
yeah, you're taught to have it. Is like really, it is drilled into you, like every single day, every moment of every day. So really, your rifle it becomes like almost like it's an attachment to you. It's an appendage.
Hmm.
It is a part of you.
Yeah.
And you carry that mentality and that relationship throughout however long you're in, whether it be 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, so even after the fact, after you get out, you maintain that, that relationship with firearms essentially.
Yeah, that was when you read that to me, that was really powerful because like it's really beautiful in the sense that I honestly forget that you're talking about a gun. And then as soon as I remember that it's talking about a gun, I feel a little weird just because I think that's, like
Yeah.
what? Why are we talking about? But I think that that says a lot there, right? That it's like I would never talk about a gun that way. Or think about a gun or feel about a gun that way. Um, but that was so different and ingrained and just a part of your existence in your military career.
And you had never heard that before I read it, right?
No, no. I mean, maybe I probably did see it in Full Metal Jacket, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
It also reads a lot different when I know that that's you, versus somebody on a
Right.
TV screen or whatever.
For sure.
Um, so that was very impactful for me. I actually he read it to me as we were prepping for this, and I was like, you got to read that because not not having heard that and thinking about other spouses who may be like, it's just a gun. Like, what's the deal? Or getting pushback or anything, it created a lot of understanding for me just having hearing you read that. So hopefully it does for others as well. But so you mentioned a little bit, of course, that doesn't just like nothing, just snap goes away when you get out of the military, right? That's our whole thing. We all know is it's a culture, it lingers on even after
Mhm.
um you separate. So we get that part. But okay, so you're not in the Marine Corps anymore. You're not in a combat situation. So how has that changed for you in terms of like what it means to own a gun, why it's important to you in everyday life, present day.
So since, in the Marines, it's taught that it's a part of you and it's directly tied to the safety of not only, yourself, but, the Marines around you, the civilians you're charged with protecting. Um, similarly, even not in any kind of hostile or combat situation, it's still, it's an important tool to protect your home, your family, um, and of course yourself.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely feel more prepared if a situation were to arise. Um, and there's also like this level of comfort, uh, just knowing that, I do have a trustworthy firearm within reach.
Mhm.
I really hope I never have to use it. I really do. That's like the last thing you ever want to have to do. But if I have to, then I have it.
Yeah. Um, and without going like too much into this, I think we hear a lot, like even beyond this community and this conversation, like, right, even if we're just thinking about gun use in America. People are like self-defense, and that has become like more and more meaningless to people as they're like, I'm sorry, do you need all these guns to protect yourself? Like really? So what I do want to address it is for if you're someone like me, who, maybe grew up that way, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Thinking guns are bad. Um, when you hear self-defense and you're like, cool, like that's not really necessary. Listen to your partner about what that means to them. Make sure you understand what that means to them with self-defense. But, to take it to a legit, but also a funny place is like service members are taught what to do when they don't have their gun. as well.
Very,
Uh,
very much.
to protect themselves. So much so that my best friend even has a little fun game she likes to play with Cody as how would you use this as a weapon? And I think just the other weekend we were hanging out and she asked how she would use me as a weapon, how you would use me as a weapon.
Yeah.
So all that to say, there are other means of self-defense, and that's a conversation you should have. But also listen to what that means to your partner,
Yes.
and why it's important. And I think that's the biggest part of this thing is like fostering that understanding of like, what does this mean to you? What maybe does it mean to me? What are maybe some of my concerns? What are some of your concerns? And like
Absolutely.
talking that out so that you're not just kind of guessing about what the other one's thinking, feeling, scared of. You really can come together and talk it all out and then make a plan based on that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a two-way street. I mean,
Yeah.
easily.
Okay.
Um,
So I kind of took it all there already, but let's not pretend that like in our current climate today, talking about firearm safety, restriction, anything like that is incredibly charged. And it's incredibly charged in our veteran community as well. So a lot of times when we're talking about lethal means safety and it gets on firearms, there's a lot of whoa, 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 whoa. No, 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 back it up. So, and I know, a lot of spouses have that concern in talking to their partner about this. So, what are some of your thoughts from the veteran perspective on the topic, just generally of lethal means safety and like why it can get so kind of heated and charged?
so, of course, as a veteran, I guess I can't speak for all veterans, but as a veteran, it's like, so without without a firearm, you can feel, or, myself as a veteran, can feel very vulnerable and exposed, unprepared. So, I feel it's incredibly important. And as a veteran, we have very intimate weapons training, which I think explains why it's such a charged subject.
No, it doesn't. I want you to go on.
Oh, okay. It's it's a common mentality that we know more than most people about weapon use and don't want to feel like we're being questioned
Mm,
about our knowledge or use of weapons or ability to handle weapons safely.
yeah, no, that makes sense.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've heard the horror stories from other veterans, diagnosed with PTSD of having their firearms taken away. Um, that definitely lent itself to not disclosing mental health issues with doctors, the VA, and that's a general concern. Um, no veteran wants this taken away from them. Basically, you're saying that we can't be trusted with a firearm, and that's incredibly personal.
Yeah. I think that's a really helpful way to phrase it is like that it could be perceived as like you're not to be trusted with this. And just like you were saying, it's like, we know how to use this better than you do, probably, whoever's telling me that or coming across in that way. Um, and I think that's really helpful to think or to know, as you're potentially talking to a veteran in your life about this. Like, I know for sure, like my experience is coming with like almost, no, okay, I shouldn't say old, no, education about gun use. And so that's important to be aware of. Again, another reason why it's important to have this conversation as a couple is you both had your own lives and how you were raised and how you were, brought into this point in your relationships. Um, that impact how you might feel about this subject. So, um, I was raised guns were bad and they had no business being owned by an individual. And so I didn't feel any sort of way about it. I just thought that's weird. Like I don't and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I probably as a kid thought like, well, it's conservative people who have guns. So I had a lot of like misconceptions about gun ownership and gun use. I certainly was not educated about, why people might have guns, how to safely use, store guns, anything like that. And so I felt more comfortable because I didn't have any concerns about you owning a gun. I knew you knew exactly what you were doing and it would be safe. Um, but there were instances where I felt, uneasy having guns in the house. Like honestly, still to this day, I feel uncomfortable if I see one. And I'm just like, oh, that's a gun. That's interesting. That's weird. And especially when I'm just like existing in my own home and things like that. And I don't want it to be a surprise. And so I think that's when we really first started having this conversation is when like the surprises started happening. Um, like as an example, Cody has his own car, but when we're both home, we usually drive my Jeep. Like you're driving it on your own, whatever. So we that's kind of our family car. Um, and there was one time where I guess we gone somewhere, I must have gone on a trip or something. But then later I was like driving to work and I like opened my, mid console to get my parking pass out for work and there was just a gun in there. And I was like, there's a gun in my car. There's a gun in my car. What? Like I didn't know there was a gun in my car. And it made me feel so weird. And instantly, I'll be honest, it instantly made me feel unsafe um, because of my own, feelings about guns, lack of education, all that stuff. Like I even started thinking like, will I get arrested? Like if I'm pulled out, like I just like all these thoughts started going through my head. Um, and so that's really kind of one example of what started this conversation of like we're coexisting, we live, we have. Then it was of course our daughter, right? We have a daughter. She's opening things. She's can reach up. Like where do we want to put this? And because I knew how much you knew and how little I knew, for a while I did have like concerns about how to even bring it up to you, where I was gonna like not be like, you're being and then this is just being me being honest. I honestly don't think you would have reacted this way, but in my discomfort, there were fears of like if you thought I was gonna be ridiculous. Like that's so silly that you're worried about that. So I really thought hard how to like bring some of this discomfort to you because of how comfortable you were with it. Um, so it's, and then now we've had a lot of conversations and it's, um not that way, but I even as someone is comfortable with you and our relationship and about how we communicate, this was a thing that I was uncomfortable with. And so it made me more or less comfortable in how to talk to you about it, or like more in my head. And so I just imagine there might be a lot of other people listening who may have a similar dynamic, or lack of, you know, education and information. Um, so those are just some of my thoughts and feelings about coming from a very different
Right, yeah.
background than you.
Yeah, and that's something, I'm totally, receptive about. I totally, I can appreciate the fact that we have not had the same upbringing around weapons, and, even more so, yeah, not everybody is going to have, your same level of, or my same level of, education and training,
Comfort.
and that's where this is like that two-way conversation, that two-way street where it's like, you have to be willing to, hear your partner. And like, then that goes both ways.
Yeah.
Actually.
And I can tell you, as we talk about things, we're going to talk here in a second, finish up about kind of best practices and having this conversation. And honestly, we kind of wrote our notes for that thinking the spouse is talking to the partner and they're concerned about how the partner is going to react. But just even this little dialogue between us made me think about best practices for someone who may not, for the spouse or partner who may not be very comfortable talking about this topic, is like I probably would have reacted really poorly if you had made it seem like it's not a big deal, like because of how comfortable and how, whatever. It'd be like it's me trying to tell you it's a big deal to me, right? So
Right.
like if you had minimized it or been like, no, they're not, it's not a big deal, Hannah. They're away, they're safe, they're good. Okay, fine. I won't leave it in the Jeep, whatever.
I'm not worried about it, so you
Right.
should
I'm
be
not worried
worried
about
about
it. So
it.
you should, that would have not worked for me. So,
Yeah.
that's just a good reminder to, be thinking about each other as
Yeah.
you're having this conversation and
Actively listen.
yeah, actively listen in any conversation, right? But,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let's get to it, right? Let's get to the meat of it, which is How are we going to keep our environment safe, both for every day, with medication and firearms, which are the two that we wanted to focus on, that we feel those are relevant to our family. But then also how that plan may need to change if we felt that one of us were to be in crisis,
Yes.
and might need to create some time and distance between any one of those things. So let's talk firearms. What are we doing now, and what do we want to be doing?
Firearms, arms that fire. Um, so I think there's a lot of ways you can store firearms. And I think there's a million different kinds of gun safes that you can get.
Mhm.
Um, and which of course, gun safes can be for other things too, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that. Right. So yeah, like right now we keep them out of reach.
Yeah.
Reese is still
Of
little.
our daughter.
Yeah, of our yes. Uh, right. Boy. Uh, so yeah, we keep them out of reach of our daughter, who is 16 months old. She's walking. She's very curious.
Mhm. Opening
So
cabinets,
yeah,
drawers.
we don't. So they're not in the nightstand.
Yeah.
Or anywhere where she could actively reach, because she is in everything now.
Yeah.
Um, so up,
Hi.
height, up high, out of reach, where she can't get to him. But that needs to change. That is going to change. And I think the best way we can change that is number one, I've already started looking at them, but a gun safe.
Hmm.
Which you can use that not just for guns.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
use that for medication.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or anything really.
Yes.
Um, so
Yeah.
weapons of medication, we're concerned about it in a crisis situation. Got
Yeah.
safe. So now in going to that on that note, in the crisis situation, right? Um, obviously come up with a plan. It's like, oh hey, if you both have access to it, what are you gonna do to limit that
Right.
access? And so I think the thing we were thinking was, have a plan. Obviously, you're talking to your partner about this, like, hey, if one of y'all's in a crisis
Not good.
situation,
Yeah.
then what can you do since you both have access to the gun safe? You both have the combination or key,
Hmm.
or sometimes both, have a combination with a key backup. Um, so changing the combination,
The
like
person not in crisis, changing the
yes,
combination.
person not in crisis, changing the combination, and already having that conversation about, hey, this is the plan we've established. If you go on, one of us goes into crisis, the person not in crisis is the one that's going to change the
Or
combination.
even if we feel like we're at
And
that warning stage. And that could be something in our plan, right? It could be that, like, at that warning stage, maybe as a family, our plan is we tell each other, hey man, I'm starting having those, hey man, hey partner,
hey, man,
hey partner.
yo, dude.
Like I'm starting to kind of have some warning signs. I'm gonna follow my safety plan and all that stuff. But even making that a part of it to be like, maybe that's the stage where we want to go ahead and take those steps
Mhm.
to make a change. Because again, you don't want to wait until it's too late. So to me, that's what I would like. If we see we're at the
Yeah.
warning signs and we're gonna do the internal coping strategies, we're also talking to each other like, hey, hey, I'm not doing super great. I'm not bad, but like gonna do my stuff that we've talked about. But hey, let's go ahead and do this.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and change that combo.
Mhm.
You go ahead and change that combo. Um, and then I thought if there's a key as well, because I think the one we're looking at has both. It's like then
Right. Yeah.
possession of the key also goes to the person not in
Exactly.
crisis.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
and then when it's passed, we share the combination, whatever, and put
Or
the key
change it
back,
back. Yeah.
or yeah, or whatever it
Exactly.
is. No, yeah, we talked through that, and that feels simple, like it's there, so I think it assuages some of your concerns. Oh, the other one that I asked for in this is also that I want to make sure I know how to use the guns. I want to know to, um, I don't want to feel unsafe around
Mhm.
them, right? Like and I don't feel unsafe. I feel unsafe because of me, not because of the gun and not because of Cody.
Mhm.
I feel unsafe because of my lack of education, and I think I have learned how to fire a firearm,
Yeah.
but
We have.
other than looking at them wherever or they may be at some point, we've never sat down and he's never showed me, how to put them together, how to use it, what to expect, um, because I've never asked. And so,
Yeah, you haven't asked. I haven't, and I never wanted to push the issue with you. Also,
no,
so it's like I know
I
I see it.
appreciate that.
I know. I feel like if I was on the other side, so I'd be like judging me. And like, dude, you haven't taught your wife about this. Like, what is wrong with you? You're a shitty Marine, right? Um, but yeah, I never wanted to try to force that
And
on
I
you.
appreciate that. Like, honestly, I may have been weird about it.
Yeah.
Like, I may have been like, oh, shoot, he wants me to learn how to gun. What does that mean? Like, so, in us talking through some of this stuff in the last, several months, we got to this point, even just when we were prepping for this, I was like, I think, yeah, yeah, just how about we talk through all that stuff? And I kind of even, told you, like, I'll let you know, like you let me know what you think is important, and then I'll kind of like also let you know where like I don't want to go or where I may not want to go. And like being able to even have that kind of conversation so that if you are getting to that point where as the person who doesn't know how to use them, you want to know more, like even that should be a conversation of how you want that to go so everyone feels good. But also being able to let him be like, I know you know what I need to know, but I also want to be open about like maybe where I might start to feel uncomfortable. Or let's be honest, people, what I'm really talking about is I don't want the boring stuff.
Noted,
Because he
noted.
could
No,
probably talk to me for 5 hours about how a gun is made and the science behind it, and he's lost me at that point. So.
the 1911 was created in.
But yeah, so that's kind of our plan. And then like an easy one to do with medication without a safe, at least at this stage with our kid is, cabinet locks, right? Childproofing, just like we childproof other stuff in our house, making sure wherever our, or putting it in a high cabinet instead of a low cabinet. Um, and something that's important to remember is we have a 16-month-old. You guys may have kids that are older. Our kid is obviously going to be older. So this is not a one and done conversation. As your family dynamics change of who's in the home, and that could be, oh, our mother is coming, and is going to live with us. And like, we need to decide how to wrap her or them or, whoever into this conversation so they're aware, whatever. Or, okay, now our kid is 10, now our kid is 16. Those could be very different ways that we're involving them in this, the conversations we're having, the safety precautions we want to take, crisis planning with them, or safety planning with them and making them do their own safety plan. So just keeping that in mind that your family may be at a different stage and therefore this could be a very different conversation.
Yes.
Or you might, you know, have
Ever
different measures you want to take.
evolving.
Yeah, ever evolving. And then, something in talking to other people that I've heard too is also like, what about, and I think this most comes up when you have kids, but I think it could come up in other instances of like, what about when other people are in the home? So what if your kid is having a slumber party over at your house and you get asked about this? Like safety precautions in your home, or if you own firearms and how they're safe. Obviously that is personal, but I think as a part of this conversation, you should have like as a part of the safety planning, you should determine together how you would address those if you were asked that, or if like what are we going to maybe do differently if we have someone else staying in our home.
Yes.
Like I know I've talked to a couple and who has a lot of medication in the home, and they feel very confident. They've involved their children that live in the home that are older about, use of that, safety around that, and feel good about it. But when other children are in the home, they take different precautions because they haven't had those conversations with those kids. So just being mindful too of other people in your home and how you might change what you do about, firearms, like medication, anything in the home, even alcohol, right? As our kids age. So it might just be something we talk about regardless. Um, and how you might want to have that conversation because like I might have one way and feel very comfortable talking to some random person who asked me that question, and Cody may be like, I'm sorry, you said what? To those people. So talk about it as a couple, right? So okay, one final thing and we'll finish out. you got to see us talk through some of the stuff as a couple. These are conversations, some of them that are newish, some of them, we've had a long time ago. And obviously we're at a pretty communicative point in our relationship that I know not all couples are maybe in right now. So, especially if you feel like you're in a situation where you're very worried about your partner, and you want to talk, you want to bring this up. Hey, I think we should do a safety plan. And there might be some concerns and nerves there. And, I certainly would have felt that at a lot of times in our relationship. So that we kind of close out just by talking about what some of the best practices are in broaching this conversation, especially if you're not both super comfortable. Um, Keeping the emphasis on safety, like, right? That's safety for you, that's safety for me, that's safety for other people in the home. That's why we're doing this. It's not, hey, I'm really worried about you and I think you're unsafe. So let's have this conversation, right? I feel unsafe around you. No, we've lost it at that point, right? So keeping the emphasis on safety for all, safety in the home, safety for all of us. Um, I think just general things, right? We always talk about the use of I statements, but it's so huge, right? If I say you a lot and you're already feeling like defensive or attacked or vice versa, that's not going to help, right? So it can be like, hey, like, and I think that's honestly how I came to you at first. I was like, especially it really was the gun in the car thing freaked me out. And so I was like, hey, like that didn't make me feel good, like I understand that was not your intention, like, but it made me think that we need to talk about this because like it made me feel a certain way, right? I'm not saying you made me feel a certain way or like blah blah blah. I'm really talking about where I'm coming from and why it's a value for me to want to have this conversation if I'm the one bringing it up. And I think just like always circling back to the why, like why are we having this conversation? Why is this important? Especially if there are any points that like maybe feel like they're getting a little heated or like off track or anything like that. And on the note of heat, do not have this conversation when you're heated. Um, that is never the time to have any productive conversation, but certainly not this one if you're worried about it. So strike when the iron is cool. Make the plan when things are not full on crisis. And you may be saying, cool, like we're in there though. Like I can't just sit around and twiddle my thumbs. And no, you're absolutely right. And so strike when the iron is coolest, right? It might not be cool, but coolest. And plan to have the conversation, right? We don't want to like blindside our partner bringing this up, like, hey, I'm feeling a certain way and I want to have this, right? So it could be, hey, I'm feeling a certain way. I'd like to devote some time for us to just sit and talk this out. Give as much information as you want. And then that way you're deciding together when you think you're both in the best headspace to talk about it. I don't know. Any other?
I was like, and that could be multiple conversations too.
Right. You don't have to sit here and do this whole long thing. And honestly, it wasn't this one conversation for us. It's been several.
It's been several over a period of time.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Cody, as always, I appreciate you being willing to come on. I think, some things it's just really helpful to hear your perspective as a veteran and then also hear how we talk things through as a couple. So I hope for you all listening that if you maybe didn't know what a safety plan was or didn't really see the point in doing one, maybe we helped you see some value in it. If not, thank you for listening regardless. And till next time. Thanks again for joining us on the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. We thank you for listening today and hope today's session left you feeling a little more connected or gave you some insight into the experiences of our military and veteran families. Don't forget to check us out at veteranspousenetwork.org to learn more about how our military and veteran families can receive the support they deserve.